internet friends! This week I am going to be answering a question from the Ginger Hermione that she left on my last video about translation. She wanted to know, what does a translator do with puns or innuendos or double meanings, since things can't always transfer exactly from one language into the other? Well, there are a few answers to that question. It depends on the situation. I want to start out by reminding you guys that source language, source text, source culture, anything source means the original language and culture in which your text was written. Target language, target text, target culture, that refers to the language or culture that you're going into. So when I was in Ecuador and people asked me where I was from, I would say, vivo en Ohio. I live in Ohio. And then invariably I would hear this joke that people love to tell. This joke is based on the word enojado, which means angry, which kind of sounds like in Ohio. So there was this mouse who wanted to meet Barack Obama, so he went to the White House and he knocked on the front door like you do, and somebody answered the door and the little mouse said, "Is Barack Obama here?" And the person who answered the door said, "No, está en Ohio. He's in Ohio." And the little mouse said, "¿Por qué está enojado conmigo? Why is he angry with me?" Not a very good joke in either language, but apparently it's really popular. I was telling this joke in a class the other day, and a friend from Mexico said, "Oh, in Mexico we say it with a chicken instead of a mouse." But this is one of those cases where some things don't translate really at all. The word angry in English sounds nothing like the words in Ohio, and therefore the joke totally loses its value in English. If you were translating a text that had this joke in it, then you would probably have to replace that joke with something totally different that is a joke in English, that makes sense in English, that's funny in English. Other times you can come up with a good equivalent. A few weeks ago I translated a text for my translation practice class that was about interviews with women who work in maquiladoras, which are factories along the US-Mexico border on the Mexico side. A lot of the working conditions there are not very good. The women who work there aren't paid very much, and sometimes the management is not very nice. And these women were talking about a supervisor they had who treated everyone equally, but there was a double entendre in the way that it was said, as in, the supervisor didn't care whether the girls were pretty or not, he hit on them just the same. In Spanish, that was rendered elegada de todo parejo. Well, trying to turn that into English is a little bit of a challenge and keeping the double entendre and having it make sense. I came up with, he grabs everyone equally, which doesn't really get it. That's too far to the hitting on them side of the double entendre and not close enough to treating everybody the same. But my friend in the class came up with, he handles us all the same, which I think is really spot on. He handles us, he treats us all the same, and he hits on us, he tries to grab us, whatever. So sometimes you get lucky and you can find a really good way to keep that double entendre from one language to the other. Sometimes you have to meet somewhere in the middle. I am working on a final translation for the semester. I'm translating a short story, and one of the characters in the story tells a story about this guy who was an imitator in the circus. And one time he came out with wings and a beak, and he acted like a bird. And everybody in the crowd laughed and laughed and laughed, and they said, "El avestruz," which means the ostrich. But avestruz in Spanish also has the connotation of idiot. So it's not clear at first whether they think he's an ostrich or whether they're going, "Oh, what an idiot." Well, in English, of course, the word ostrich doesn't really have the connotation of idiot, but we do have cuckoo, which is a bird and means crazy, stupid, that sort of thing. So in my translation, everywhere that it said avestruz, I changed it to cuckoo, and it works out the same, approximately. It's lucky that in English we have a word for a bird that also means stupid, crazy, idiotic. If we didn't have that, I'm not sure what I'd do. I'd have to think a lot harder about a solution to that problem. So to sum it up, it really depends on the situation. It depends on what's possible in your source language and what's possible in your target language. And you really just have to use your best judgment, and it's something that you do get better with as time goes on. So I hope that answers the question. If any of you have any questions about translation, I would love to hear them. Please leave them for me in the comments and I will try to make a video explaining what I can about them. I'm still learning about translation, obviously, but I like to share what I know and what I am learning. That's all for me today. I hope you all have a great week and I hope everything is worth the pineapple. Bye everybody.